All right, so here's another Photoshop extra that we're going to look at. We're going to look at some additional glitching techniques, just some other things that I kind of thought of to do this. We're going to take this design and then we're going to glitch it. Show you some interesting ways to glitch it. One using some brushes and some brush settings to do it, and one using this filter called Displace. Now, Displace is interesting because it works on. I'm going to show you some of the images we're going to be using for Displace. This was a line image that I created. These are actually physically glitched images from a scanner. They're just black and white, saved as PSDs. That's really important to make sure they're saved as PSD files. It's what we're going to use to then glitch this, right? So it's using this as like a base to then do some glitching with. So we're going to look at that. We are also going to look at some brushes that I made. Now, these did come from Illustrator, but you can make them in Photoshop. They're simply just squares and stuff like that. So these are brushes that I made, right? So I made these into brushes, right? Just some lines and some variations on things. But what I want to do is show you inside the brush settings, how do we take that and make that something that is going to be interesting. The first thing, let's go ahead and look at Displace. In order to do that, I'm going to make a duplicate of what I have. So I'm going to use Command Option Shift E. On the PC, it is Control Alt Shift E. And so that just creates a copy of it. We are going to then create it, convert it to a smart filter so we can manipulate this Displace. So let's go Filter and then Distort and Displace. Now, generally 10 by 10 works, but the more you do it, the more it glitches. So let's start 10 by 10 and I'll show you how we can change it. Now, scale to fit is what I like. We can also play with tile. Repeat edge pixels give it a little bit more of that glitchy look. We can also, and you can play around with what wraparound does. So let's do okay. And it says, all right, well, what do you want to use as your glitch? First thing we are going to use is we are going to use this one right here to glitch and go ahead and do open. And you see immediately it has that kind of glitched effect. It used that as its control. Now, let's double click on this. Let's play with some of these settings. Let's go 50 and 50 and do okay. Use this same one again and do it. And you can see it does it even more. Okay. So you may say, well, I don't like that, or I don't want to do that, and that's totally fine. We're going to add some stuff to it, or you can always go back and change this. What's also great is because we have the original underneath it, what if we just simply put a mask on this? Oh, I have my, what are we going to do? Let's do this one. Oh, because it's at 20%. Right, so I just have this kind of squared brush that's here. If we look at what it looks like. So it's just a bunch of squares. And I'm just kind of taking in, filling out, right? So we have something like that. You may say, oh, I like where that's going. So let's kind of bring that. Let's double click on Displace. Let's go back to, I don't know, let's do 20 and 20. Let's do tile and wrap around. Let's see what the difference is. Let's use that same one. Okay, so it creates that effect. And you may think that's great, or you want to change or shift or move or do other things, and that's really up to you. So let's double click. Let's try one more. Let's do okay. Let's use this one. And that creates this kind of wavy effect that's going on. And again, you can always change that, displace it, you can mask it and do all those kind of things to it, right? So let's say we like where this is going. I'm going to create a new layer. And we are now going to use these brushes. So let's just use this one that I have at the moment. Let's make it a lot smaller. So we don't want it so big just for the effect. You may decide for yourself you like it at this size. We're going to use the clone stamp, all layers. And you may decide I just want to use, let's take this off. If you just want to use it the way that it is, right, you can do some kind of stuff with, oh, because it went back to the size. That's why. So we are going to, let's go on the square one that's here, just make it a little bit smaller. Sorry, I was on the wrong brush. So you can see now it's smaller. I'm going to use Option to select and just stamp, and you can see I can kind of manipulate with that. But that's not the really cool part. The really cool part is let's play with the shape dynamics and scattering. So the first thing is let's just make this a little bit smaller and bring the spacing down to 0. We're going to click on shape dynamics and we're going to say, all right, well, the size jitter, I want it to be, I want to change its size as I drag it. And scattering, let's scatter this a little bit more, right? So it's going to scatter as I kind of manipulate it. And brush tip shape, let's increase the spacing here. So again, as we're kind of clicking this, it spaces out a little bit more. So we've increased the spacing. We've changed the shape dynamics to 100%. So it'll be, as I drag, it'll go from small to big to everything in between. And we're going to scatter both axes. If we just scatter one, you can see it goes in one direction. I can also do count if I want multiple, right? Depends on what you want to do with this. Let's stick to one for right now. I'm going to go ahead and click and sample. Let's sample on that pink line. And you can see it's kind of scattering around as I do it. Now you may say, you know what? Too much scatter. I want to keep that a little bit closer. All right. You can see it keeps it a little bit closer. You may say shape dynamics. It's a little bit too all over the place. Right? You may say, let's make this a little bit smaller. So there's all these options that you do just kind of like what you want to do, which is really fascinating. So let's just take that one off. Let's do a new layer. Let's grab another brush that's here. Let's do this one. And it kept the same amount. So if you wanted to change that, you could always go in. For this one, let's up the size jitter. Let's up the scattering. Let's make this a whole lot smaller. And give a little bit more. You know what? I want to keep the small spacing. So now we're here. And you can see I can just create all these other additional little bits and pieces that I kind of go with. I could simply say, you know what? I want that to be off like this. And I want it to be bigger. And I just want to use these blocks by themselves. Really good way that you can also do it. So I worked on some ones previously, just playing around, right? There was a glitch that I did. That's what I kind of added to it. Here was another one with just adding in some bits and pieces here as well. So it all depends on what you want to do, but these are really great ways that you can make your own brushes to do this, make your own glitch happen, and then use Displace to do it. Now you could do it on any sort of thing that you have. So for example, let's go back to something like this. That is just a whole bunch of lines that I created. But look what it can do, right? It has this really neat effect going on to it. So those are just some things that you can do with glitching that's really fun and really exciting.